Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we have a Romanian PAR-3. This is a kind of, well, it's a horrible workaround kludge of a rifle to make a not quite AK that could avoid the regulations of the US assault weapons ban. These were brought in 2002, at sort of in the tail end of the assault weapons ban. But during this period, of course, the assault weapons ban in the United States ran from 1994 until 2004. It was largely based on cosmetic features, things like pistol grips, bayonet lugs, threaded muzzles. It was an attempt to prohibit importation of military-looking, scary rifles. What it really did was just spawn 1,000 different workarounds of, okay, if a pistol grip isn't allowed, we'll go with a thumb hole grip, so the rifle is mechanically exactly the same, but because we have a different shaped stock, we can import it. There was a ton of that. In Romania, the Cugir factory complex in particular, was a large manufacturer of assault weapon ban compliant AKs in all sorts of different configurations. Over the course of the 10 years of this ban, the requirements changed a bit, the style, the type of AKs being imported changed to fit the changing regulations. But what someone realized at some point here was that all of this regulation was fundamentally based on application to semi-automatic rifles. And well, if you had a rifle that wasn't semi-automatic, none of this applied. In fact, 922R, the import parts requirement, didn't apply either. So they took, at Cugir, a standard Romanian PM63 military AK, and they just took the gas system and took it off and replaced it with this kludgy pump. So when you fire the rifle, nothing actually happens. Well, I mean, it fires a bullet, but nothing happens in the action until you manually rack that thing to eject the empty case and chamber a new one. With that done, presto, it's not semi-automatic, so none of these legal things apply, and we can import this very easily into the US. Incidentally, you could also import this very easily into much of Europe, although it doesn't appear, as far as I can tell, that anyone in Europe was desperate enough to actually import these. This appears to have been a US-only sort of project. So let me pull this apart. Let me show you how this pump works. And they made a couple of other changes to the gun as well that are interesting to look at. All right, behold the horror that is the pump-action AK receiver. It's mostly a regular AK from here back with a couple changes. First off, they just took off the charging handle because you've got the pump handle, so no need to charge it via this. And then they milled off the top of the rear sight block and replaced the rear sight with a notch that's sort of spot welded onto the top of the receiver cover. And that's a bit of a mystery to me. Like, why would you do that? It seems like more work, but maybe it was cheaper to make this than to actually use the rear sight components for a regular AK. Not sure on that one, but it is very much a distinctive feature of both the PAR-1 and the PAR-3. We've got our markings here made by CN Romarm SA/Cugir. That's essentially the Romanian arms export company. Cugir is the factory complex in Romania, imported CAI, Century Arms International, in Georgia, Vermont. A nice confusing name there, 2 states. On the other side, we have a very crudely electro-penciled or something, PAR-3, caliber 5.56 by 45 millimeter. Serial number here, it's P3, which is PAR-3. Serial number on this one is 446, there were not that many of them, -02, 02 is the year of production, so 2002. And you'll see that a bunch of the parts are marked with that same serial number, 446. Now, my understanding is that in general, these shipped with a 10-round 5.56 magazine. This one's a little bit rusty, I apologize. That works fine, but because these guns were essentially immune to all of the assault weapons ban legislation, they came with a full regular magazine well. They even have the little magazine well dimples here to properly stabilize the magazines, and full 30-round magazines will fit just fine. However, if you're going to do this, you really want to use Romanian 5.56 mags. What apparently shipped with this particular one is this magazine, which is a 5.45 AK-74 mag that Century just stamped 223 cal on the bottom of and went, there we go, we stamped it, now it is a 5.56 mag. It fits just fine, locks in place nicely. We'll see if it actually feeds or not. It probably won't, because the follower and the curve of a 5.45 magazine are in fact subtly different than 5.56, and there's a reason that they make 5.56 mags a little differently. for the record, if you have one of these, the Romanian 5.56 mags like they had for the Cugir clones, these things will also work just peachy fine on this gun. Oh, and by the way, you do get a scope rail on the side. Kind of cool. Last feature to point out to you here is they actually put a sort of conical muzzled device that wouldn't qualify as a flash hider here, and it was welded on. Someone has cut the weld on this one, which is no longer any sort of legal issue since it's no longer 2004. But this is how they originally came outfitted. I would think in theory they could have come with a regular flash hider and a threaded muzzle, but they didn't. Our pump handle and handguard are both held in place by what basically look like HK cross pins. Go ahead and pop those out. Yeah, we can pull these out, and then the handle just falls right off. So there's your molded, some sort of polymer fiberglassy sort of pump handle. Do the same thing, pull the pin for the handguard, which is a little tighter. There's that. And then I can pull the handguard forward and off. There we go. So there's your handguard. It's wood. It's a little bit on the fragile side, looks like. I wouldn't squeeze that too tightly. You got an open slot on both sides so that your pump handle with its cross pins can run forward and back. And then we've got a gas tube here with this little hanger hook. So to get that out, we're going to take the rear dust cover off. There is no extra stabilization or tightening or anything on this to help secure the rear sight. It just fits on mostly tight like a regular AK top cover. We do have a regular recoil spring in here. And then our bolt carrier. The bolt's identical to a standard bolt. The carrier is identical except that the charging handle has been milled off. Instead of the typical gas piston, we have this guy with this hook, pivot, catch that rolls down. The reason that this has to fold up like that is so that it can get through the rear sight block for disassembly. Let's lastly lift this up, take the gas tube out, and you can see that there is a slot cut in the bottom of the gas tube for that little guy to hang down, and that just links into the front cross pin of the pump handle. If we look up here at what was originally the gas block, it's the Romanian combination front sight block and gas block. There is no gas port actually drilled in it. So normally it would be down in there. There's no gas port. This hole is what connects the cross pin to hold the handguard in place. And then what was originally basically a weight reduction hole, they have dropped a sling catch into. So that's where you hook the front of your sling, should you, I guess, want to put a sling on this. And that's it. The barrel is actually smaller in diameter. It's a thinner profile barrel than a standard Romanian AK barrel, presumably because they decided since it can't fire semi-automatically, it doesn't really need to be able to absorb as much heat as a regular AK, which gets a little bit of a heavier barrel. Everything back here is totally standard AK. There is no slam fire in this. There is still a disconnector in it. So if you hold the trigger down, the hammer stays back. So you can't just hold the trigger and pump the thing as fast as possible to shoot. You do have to pull the trigger independently for each shot. There you are. There is the Romanian PAR-3 field stripped. These were manufactured in 2002. You saw the 02 suffix on the serial number. They were brought into the US right about that same time, 2002. Century, talking to Century, they said they imported about 2,000 of these total. Although unfortunately, they weren't able to give me any breakdown of how many of those were the PAR-1 versus the PAR-3. For what it's worth, in their catalog that year, you would actually pay a $10 premium to get the 5.56 PAR-3. It was $360. The PAR-1 in 7.62x39 was $350. At that time, a post-ban G3/SETME pattern rifle would cost you about $450. A Yugoslav SKS, the 5966 with the grenade launcher attachment, that would cost you $140. So give you a little price context here. They were never super popular. I think everyone who handled them was like, this is really kind of a weird kludge. I'd rather have a semi-automatic post-ban gun, thank you very much. A few people that I have seen reference to online did actually go through the trouble of building these back into semi-automatic rifles. At the time, maybe there's some justification for doing that. Today, that's stupid. These things have a bit of a premium today for being as weird and goofy and rare as they are. And it's really not worth it to try and rebuild one into a semi-auto because you can just buy a new semi-auto instead for less money and a lot less work. So there was allegedly, by the way, a PAR-2. That would have been this same rifle in 5.45x39. Talking to the Romanians at Cugir, they said they did make it. Talking to Century, they said they didn't import it. I can't find any real reference to these being imported anywhere other than the US, so I suspect Cugir at the time, of course, they were making rifles, AKs, in all 3 calibers. This was, in fact, based on the fundamental platform of a 5.56 AK, standard military AK that they were offering. So it was easy to convert it to this pump action system. And it was easy to do a 5.45 one as well. You know, why not? But it appears that there was never actually an import contract for the 5.45s. And I can understand why at the time, especially for an initial order, the 2 common cartridges to use would have been 7.62 and 5.56. Had those taken off really well, I could see Century importing at least a test batch in 5.45, but they didn't. There appears to only have been one big import of these, and then they didn't sell very well because they are, in fact, really stupid. And so there was never a PAR-2 imported. So I think that pretty well covers the history and the mechanics of it. So now let's head out to the range. I'm curious to see just how kludgy and weird this is to actually shoot.
I figured some ammunition from the same vintage as the gun would be appropriate here. So got some Wolf Military Classic 62 grain 223. It's not even 5.56 NATO. And I figure we'll start with the 10-round mag that these usually came with. It's interesting to have a pump action that still has a return spring in it. So it kind of closes itself. Let's see how good or bad this is to shoot. I actually made a hit. Okay, 2 things. First off, it's actually zeroed. Like the sights are offset, but someone took the time to actually zero this thing, and I'm making hits on a mini silhouette at like 50 yards. So I'm happily surprised by that. Secondly, it feels bizarre to shoot. Because if you shoot AKs, you're used to the feel of the bolt carrier coming back and then going into battery again. It's this, you know, comes back, goes forward, comes back, goes forward. And this, you only have half of it. So it feels like it's malfunctioning every single time you shoot it. Because the bolt doesn't reciprocate. It closes, fires, and stays closed until you manually rack it. And the handling with the pump way up out front feels kind of weird. Like I'm used to holding an AK back here. All right, and a click. So I did also bring out the big mag, the 5.45 mag that Century went ahead and said, nope, we'll stamp 223 on it. Now it's a 223 mag. And I'm curious if that's actually reliable. Just a reminder, they milled off the bolt handle there, so you don't have that to either use or worry about getting in the way, I suppose. I mean, that's a great start. We're just not picking up that top round. So this is why you can't just stick 5.56 into a 5.45 mag, because the rounds don't stack quite properly and you end up with the top round sitting base down in a way that it won't actually get picked up. Oh, wait, there we go. All right. I wiggled it enough that I got that one to work. But let's see if the second one does. Nope. All right, so we have the same issue. You can see that scrape on the top of the cartridge. Here we go. All right. Nope, same thing. We're getting bolt overs. I was hoping as we got farther down into the mag, these problems would go away, and they will at some point. Now it's gone from not working to being kind of finicky. All right, so if you have a 5.56 AK, it is worth getting actual 5.56 magazines, because otherwise you end up with a whole lot of that. Worth pointing out though, the actual 5.56 mag, the 10 rounder, which is by the way the same as the Romanian made Uyghur clone mags, these work just fine because they're set up to actually properly stagger 5.56. So I'm gonna load that mag up with the last of the ammo from this, and I'm curious, one run through, let's see how fast I can actually shoot this. All right, here's one other fun thing. Oh, no, you expect to do that and burn the crap out of yourself because the gas tube gets really hot, right? Well, not when there's no gas going through it, it doesn't. All right, 10 rounds. By the way, there is no slam fire on this, so if I hold the trigger and pump it, doesn't do anything. Okay, this is terrible to try and rapid fire. I bet with practice you could do it fine, but the handle's too small, the handle's too far forward, it's too slippery, and man, if you're used to actually shooting an AK, this thing is just really awkwardly weird to shoot. And, come on. There we go. One round left in it. Oh, no. Just an empty case. All right, that is the Romanian PAR-3. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.